Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
They were a tanking team coming into the year, or so we thought. Now the Thunder are one game away from the playoffs. Also, the Bulls will get their chance at the postseason, and Syracuse Athletics is losing more than a Hall of Fame coach with Jim Boeheim. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Through two nights, it was the game of the play-in. The Oklahoma City Thunder get a thrilling 123-118 win over the New Orleans Pelicans in New Orleans. Josh Giddey and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander were absolutely brilliant in this one. Rylan Stiles from Locked On Thunder joins me now. And Rylan, I understand Zion Williamson didn't play. Larry Nance Jr. didn't play. This was a banged up Pelicans squad. But still, for a Thunder team that a lot of us thought was tanking coming into the season, to be at this point now one win away from the playoffs is pretty remarkable. How did they do it?
This has been a season that's been remarkable all the way through. The youngest team in basketball this year, the second youngest team ever in the history of our league, only ahead of last year's Thunder team. No Chet Holmgren. And they lost Kenrich Williams, one of their best rotational players for this season midway through as well. So they've dealt with adversity just as New Orleans has, and it's how you got to this point. But for this team to be this inexperienced and to play in this spot and win on the road in a back and forth game where New Orleans had control of it with under 7 minutes left at home, it felt like this young team was going to fall way of what typically happens for young teams and struggle to close out games, but the Thunder rose above that, and it's just another testament to how well coached they are and to how they can close out games with a true superstar in SGA who struggled mightily in the first half, but still, when you look up, ends up with 32 points on 22 shots, and it just shows how he can do it in a multitude of ways. And then Josh Giddey's 30-point game. The Thunder had their formula that they needed. It was that simple. It was Josh Giddey stepping up as a scorer and Lou Dort stepping up from beyond the arc with 4 threes. With those two things plus Shai, you're going to feel really good about your chances to win. And now the Thunder become the first ever 10 seed in the West to beat a 9 seed.
Josh Giddey, 31, 10, and 9. He was one rebound away from a triple-double, and 4 of those boards were on the offensive end. I know that it's easy to say, okay, when you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and then you bring in Chet Holmgren into this mix, okay, that's your big two. But when you see Josh Giddey do this in a playoff game, does that make you recalibrate not just the hierarchy on this team potentially, but the ceiling of this team to see his game translate in the postseason this way?
I think that it does. I think that it like Josh Giddey has been the question mark of this Thunder team. Can he shoot? Can he score? Can he play offensively in the postseason beyond just his passing, beyond his rebounding for his position? Because he's also not an incredible defender. But tonight he showed you that intangible thing that we struggle to quantify. And so since we can't quantify it, we just kind of cast it aside. But throughout his career, playing against grown men his entire life, now at 20 years old, he's always stepped up in games of this magnitude, in games that have this much weight to them, and plays his best basketball here. And if that's what you're going to sign up for a 20-year-old who's not going to have to be the first option, not going to have to be the second option, not going to have to be the third option whenever rookie Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara really comes into his own offensively in these spots moving forward, you're going to sign the dotted line for that every single time with Josh Giddey, given what he gives you offensively as a creator as well. So for Josh to step up here, knock down a couple threes, and score really well at the rim, and off of that comes his playmaking and passing, it was a huge bonus for OKC. Even if they would have lost this game, it makes you feel so much more confident about the core of this team, because that's one less offensive liability moving forward if he can play like that against a really, really, really good Pelicans defense.
So this sets us up for a matchup on Friday, Thunder and T-Wolves. The Wolves probably should have beat the Lakers in that game, but weren't able to close the deal, which is something that they struggled with all season long. So this is the biggest Oklahoma City Thunder game in a couple seasons now. Handicap it for us quickly.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting game for OKC because, as you mentioned, they have not been in the postseason for 2 years. And when they were in the postseason, it was in the bubble. They weren't going on the road. They weren't facing off with environments like this. And Minnesota has a lot to lose in this game. They're going to be the team that has all the pressure in the world. The Thunder have once again surpassed their expectations. We didn't think that they'd be in the postseason. They got there. We didn't think that they'd beat New Orleans. They got here. So they have nothing to lose and everything to gain in this setting.
Stay up to date on the Oklahoma City Thunder by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Thunder on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for making Locked On Sports today your first listen. Coming up, the Bulls beat the Raptors, but now have playoff Jimmy and the Heat to deal with. Before we get to how they will do that, a big-time player in the Commanders' bidding war is bowing out. We're ready for the NBA playoffs, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. That's like risk-free, basically. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. That's why they call it that. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be winning the NBA title. Or you can check out some action on the diamond, some early season baseball. The Yankees are hosting the Twins. FanDuel has the odds of the Bronx Bombers winning at -142. You can do all of this on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. The Washington Commanders will not come with free 2-day shipping. According to an ESPN report, Jeff Bezos will not bid on the Commanders. The Amazon billionaire's interest in buying the franchise and his presence hovered over the proceedings despite never having made a bid. In March, a source close to Bezos said Commanders owner Dan and Tanya Snyder were blocking him from the bidding, which multiple sources close to Snyder, of course, denied. The Amazon founder and former president also owns the Washington Post, which published several investigative stories over the past 3 years, raising ugly details about Snyder and the dysfunction in the organization. The NBA sent a memo to its league office staff Tuesday instructing them to reduce expenses and limit hiring for the remainder of the fiscal year because of economic constraints. This according to recent reports. Like other businesses in the U.S. and globally, the league office is not immune to macroeconomic pressures and taking steps to reduce expenses, NBA spokesperson Mike Bass said in a statement. This comes on the heel of a new collective bargaining agreement that would ensure some labor peace through the rest of this decade. The New York Islanders are heading to the postseason.
The New York Islanders are playoff bound. Islanders down the Montreal Canadiens 4-2. A solid effort from the Islanders. They got an early lead and never really felt like they were in danger of losing it. They outshot the Canadiens, dominated the pace of play, and in the third period when they were protecting their lead, they really played Islanders hockey. They kept it simple. They forechecked, kept the puck in the Montreal zone as much as possible. And when it got into the Islander zone, they were efficient and smart with the puck and cleared it out. That is the formula for victory for the New York Islanders. They still need to clean up the power play, but everything else seemed to click. Brock Nelson, 2 big goals. So back to the postseason for the New York Islanders. And after a roller coaster ride of a season, it certainly feels good. For more, listen to and watch the Locked On Islanders podcast with me, Gil Martin, wherever you get your podcasts.
On the diamond, the Diamondbacks look, well, back.
Can you believe it? The D-backs continued their streak of not dropping a series in 2023 after destroying the Brew Crew 7-3 in the series finale. Miller Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks here. Dre Jameson has been a spectacle coming out the bullpen for the D-backs, but with Zach Davies going on the injured list, we needed someone to replace him, so why not put one of the best pitching prospects in the organization in the rotation, and that's what the D-backs did with Dre Jameson, and he stepped up once again. He only pitched 4 innings, but looked absolutely nasty doing so, and He only needs to go 4 innings because the offense backed him up today with 7 runs. They had 5 doubles, a couple home runs as well, and the D-backs were able to take down the Brew Crew, continue their streak of not dropping a series in 2023, and now they got the second most wins in the National League. I want to say, 13 games into the season so far? Yeah, we're feeling good as D-backs fans right now.
And the Cardinals are leaving Colorado happy, and not just because of the legalized, you get it.
Captain Jack Flaherty and the long ball get it done in Denver. Hey, it's JD from Locked On Cardinals. In less than 24 hours from their thrilling comeback win over the Rockies, the Cardinals again fell behind early, but not for long, as the team got home runs from Tyler Bro Neal, who sent a missile into the shrubbery in center field, 461 feet away from home plate. You get a 2-run moonshot into left field by Nolan Arenado, and then another go-ahead bomb by Nolan Gorman, this time to the opposite field, and the boys go on to win the game 7-4. Jack Flaherty much better in this one. Only 5 1/3 innings pitched, but just 1 earned run on 5 hits. He had 6 punchies and only walked 1 guy. He's gotten better each time out, and although he didn't get the win today, you got to be encouraged by his performance. Back-to-back wins means a happy flight home tonight. For the latest info and updates, be sure to keep it Locked On Cardinals.
If Wednesday's Bulls-Raptors tilt felt a lot like Lakers-Timberwolves, it's because it was. The Raptors controlled this game almost the entire way, leading by as many as 19. Then a 37-24 fourth quarter helped the Chicago Bulls get the win. Joining me now, Pat, the designer from Locked On Bulls. And Pat, what changed in the fourth quarter? How was Chicago able to claw their way back and get a victory in Toronto?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the change came a little bit earlier than the fourth, but it just was too much for Toronto to overcome. I think the change came from Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine decided in the second quarter, hey, I got to go off here. 9 points in the second quarter, second half, 31 points in the second half there. I mean, 30 points, I should say, in the second half alone. Zach LaVine was what changed for the Chicago Bulls and the mindset defensively, right? Like the Bulls, they're not the longer team. They're not the better offensive rebounding team, but they were the more aggressive team. I do think that Patrick Beverley still played a part in this because it looked like the Chicago Bulls came out of halftime ready to punch somebody in the mouth. And that's what we know Pat Bev for. I mean, if we're being 100%, yeah, I mean.
Well, and it showed up in the stat sheet as well. 58 first half points for the Raptors, just 47 second half points. You mentioned that defensive intensity. It was that point of attack defense that we saw. And now it is do or die. They get an opportunity on Friday against the Miami Heat, 2 teams that are tough. They are not going to be afraid of this moment. Handicap that matchup for us from the Bulls' perspective.
I mean, Bulls have won this matchup this season, but as Bulls fans, right, we always have in the back of our mind, hey, we won a lot of matchups versus Miami, and then LeBron beat us. But it's like I said during my live call, LeBron ain't walking through that door. Chris Bosh ain't walking through that door. Dwayne Wade ain't walking through that door. I think that the Chicago Bulls have a real shot in this one. The thing that they can't do is what we saw them do tonight versus the Toronto Raptors and what we've seen them do a lot this season versus many teams. You can't get off to a slow start versus Miami. Miami is a defensive team, very much like the Bulls. They're not going to let you just waltz back into this game. They may go through the scoring lulls like we saw with them versus Miami, versus Atlanta, but they're not going to have this game where all of a sudden, right, like you look at the Bulls down 19 in the game, and you're just like, yeah, they got this. They're able to come back from this. It's not the same dynamic here. I think the Bulls can play with anybody. I think the Bulls can get this win. I think the Bulls have confidence going into this win, and I think that Zach LaVine is the most confident player in this play-in tournament right now. Now, what does that mean in the long run? Who knows, right? But at least for one more game, I think the Bulls have a real advantage coming in versus Miami, especially seeing as how they played them this season. But there's always the storyline of Jimmy Butler versus Chicago that will come back to bite me in the butt when I say these things, right?
It does seem like Jimmy Butler has a lot of teams where everyone's just like, we don't want to see this guy. They're like the Celtics. They don't want to see Jimmy Butler. There are a lot of teams that are just like this guy is John Wick in the postseason. We know that, we've seen it. I want to ask you a sort of a broader question here, because when you look at the personnel on this Bulls team, Alex Caruso is a defender, Patrick Williams, a defender, but there are guys that play a lot of minutes, Vucevic, DeRozan, LaVine, who are not at least known as defenders, but they were 7th in points per game, top 5 in defensive efficiency. So how are they doing it?
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? It's about playing defense as a team. The Chicago Bulls do a good job playing defense together. And right, like when you saw in this game, right, it wasn't so much that Zach LaVine was the greatest on-ball defender you've ever seen in your life. It was more so that when Zach LaVine's making a good defensive stance at the top, Patrick Williams is coming from behind, able to get a hand in there to swipe the ball away. Or Alex Caruso is playing really good defense up top, causing Scotty Barnes to make a turn right into DeMar DeRozan where he could just snatch that ball away. You have to play together as a string. That's what defense is. You got to be able to play five guys all together, really be able to come out and work as a team to stop the guys going the other way, because the talent in the NBA is just too good. To me, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, guys not known for their defense. To me, who Zach LaVine's defense has improved this season, right? Like they're getting the benefit of, hey, I've got three guys on the floor more times than not that are defensive-minded guys. When you look at what Pat Bev, P. Will, and Alex Caruso can do on the defensive end, and you saw it make an impact in the second half of this game tonight.
Stay up to date all year on the Chicago Bulls by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Bulls on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, Syracuse is set to lose a lot when Jim Boeheim is no longer the coach. Next season will be the first season without Jim Boeheim leading the Syracuse men's basketball team in almost half a century. Locked On Syracuse host Owen Valentine spoke with Brent Axe about why this may be even more of a problem than initially thought.
And then we get the news yesterday formally that Weitzman will no longer be sort of partaking. You were one of, the spearheads on that news. Just, has this been something you've been hearing for a little bit? Was it something that was, you formally heard yesterday for the first time, or what has been sort of the backstory behind getting to this decision?
Well, there's definitely been some rumbles the past couple of months that things were starting to divide between Adam and Syracuse. Certainly when the Boeheim news came out, I mean, Adam and Jim are really good friends. And that was a question that came up right off the bat, right? Would Adam continue his support of Syracuse, or was his support essentially for Boeheim? But yeah, you had heard a lot of things. So then the Jesse Edwards news breaks yesterday. I just went right to the source and wanted to kind of figure out what that process was. And look, one thing led to the next, and, Adam was insistent on a number of things. He told me some things off the record that I can't share, but what he was willing to talk about was that, yeah, essentially he's done.
I went to Syracuse. I want to see the team be really good. I want to see the basketball team in particular be really good, because when I went to Syracuse 18 years ago, my hope was just that Jim Boeheim would make it through my tenure there. 2 decades later, almost, he was still coaching. His legacy and his shadow looms over Syracuse athletics. But name, image, and likeness, giving the flexibility and the financial benefits of the players who are creating the product that is making all of this money is a good thing. And so even as someone who understands this is not potentially ideal for my alma mater, it is better for the student athletes who were being exploited under the old system. I would rather have an equitable system than have Syracuse, who I love dearly, benefit unfairly from the work that those kids are putting in. And finally, Major League Baseball set out to solve an issue of pace of play this year, and thank God they did. But their solution may have had unintended consequences on, of all things, concession sales. The average game is now taking almost 25 fewer minutes, which means fans have less time to purchase things like hot dogs, peanuts, and maybe most importantly, beer. To combat that time crunch, at least 4 teams, the Arizona Diamondbacks, Texas Rangers, Minnesota Twins, and Milwaukee Brewers, because of course the Milwaukee Brewers, have extended alcohol sales through the 8th inning this season. Others, like the Miami Marlins and New York Mets, still have 7th inning cutoffs, but haven't ruled out changes. Mind you, these last call times have always been under the guise of fans sobering up a bit before hitting the road. Hopefully, people are not drinking and driving. If a team's bottom line is affected, you hate to see them putting fans' safety at risk, but these are adults. If you're old enough to buy a beer, you should be old enough to act responsibly. So do that. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Now go find your favorite team's Locked On podcast and make them your second listen. Coming up tomorrow, will Damian Lillard be a Blazer for much longer? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.